Starting our series on the book One at a Time, and I'm super excited. This is week 1, and I've titled this Zoom Lenses. Now, I don't know if anybody can ever relate to this, but I can. Is anybody oblivious to things? I wish Camille was in here because she would be shaking her head and laughing right now, but I will literally be looking for something and I can't find, to give you a prime example, 2 weeks ago I was looking for a pair of sweatpants. And I was like, Camille, can you just go in the closet and look for my sweatpants? Because I know they're right in front of my face. She walks into the closet. 30 seconds later, she walks out with the very exact pair of pants I'm looking for. And so I realize I'm oblivious. It reminds me of this video I watched, and I haven't quite done this yet, and I'm glad Camille's not in here because I might fall for this sometimes. This wife is in a hurry. She runs out. She's running out of the house, and her husband calls her and says, "Hey, honey, you forgot your phone on the counter." And she runs back in with her phone in her hand, saying, "What? Where is it? Where's my phone?" And he's telling her, "I want you to think about what you just said." "What?" "You said I don't have my phone. I'm looking for it." And he says, "What's in your hand?" And then she looks down, gets very angry, then storms off. Sometimes, if I'm being honest, when I have a lot going on and I feel like there's so much going on in my life and I'm rushing through, I can get tunnel vision. Anybody ever do that? Anyone tunnel vision ears? And so I can get tunnel vision and I will just miss everything else because I'm trying to get to what I'm getting to. And then we get to the point where, I'm running back in looking for my phone that's in my hand. It's weird. It's crazy. I have a problem. Pray for me. I need it. But realistically, I think we can all at some level relate to this picture. Each of these people are going different places. They've got there's 100 different people. Everybody's got a different thing going on. They're all trying to get to a destination. They're probably not all paying attention to what's going on in front of them, but they know they got to get across the street to get to where they're going and forget everything else on the side. I think sometimes we are so oblivious at times to the world that's going on around us because we've got so many things going on in our lives. Anybody ever feel that way? If any of you maybe this week had that feeling, how am I ever going to get it all done? For me, I was just talking to Mark about this morning, actually. It's funny, I was like, and he's like, "Darian, I'm trying to remember, I'm going to butcher what you said. You're like, "Darian, you can only take care of so much at a time." And I say, "Well, the quickest way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time, but I got a lot of elephants." And that's how I feel. And yet this morning, I want us to look at a passage about Jesus as he's got a lot going on. But I want us to think about and process how he reacts to these distractions or things that get in the way and are wanting to take his time. So if you have your Bibles, turn with me over to Luke chapter 8. We're going to be looking at verses 40 through 45, but keep your Bible open. So we'll be starting on Luke chapter 8, verses 40 through 45. So Luke chapter 8, starting in verse 40, it says this: "Now when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. And then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at the feet of Jesus, pleading with him to come to his house because his only daughter, a girl about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds crushed him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. But no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately Her bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus asked. Now, what's going on in this story before this passage is Jesus has just healed this man who is demon-possessed with many, many demons. And you know that if you were to heal somebody who was like this man who has multiple demons in him, people are going to start talking. Isn't that Fred? Didn't Fred have a bunch of, wasn't he the crazy guy that we had to lock up and make sure he didn't go out and get out and do crazy? Isn't that Fred? He seems normal now. What happened? And then Fred told him, you'll never believe it. I met this man named Jesus. And I was demon possessed. You knew it was over for me. And yet he came and he cast this demon out. And now I am free from the chains that have bound me. Wow. I got to meet this guy. And then you know how people do. I could probably ask some of you, one thing sometimes I find out about church news from you guys. Y'all are so good at untelling things, and sometimes, there's things that shouldn't be out that are out, and you're just like, how did that happen? Oh, I heard it from so-and-so. Well, I heard it from so-and-so. It's amazing how fast news spreads. And can you imagine how fast news spread in a time and an era where they didn't have this? I just snorted. That was weird. And they're meeting in taverns and places and the town center and all of these places, and people are saying, did you hear about Fred? I'm giving him the name Fred. It was either that or George. I don't know why, but But Fred was crazy, but now he's not. You know what he said? What? He said he met a man named Jesus. Really? Jesus from Nazareth. I think I've heard something about him. I think I've heard a few stories about him. I think, I heard that there's this crazy guy named John who's out in the wilderness baptizing people. The guy who eats bugs. He baptized him, and the heavens opened up, and then there was this loud proclamation from the heavens that said, this is my son, who I'm well pleased. I didn't believe it, but I'm seeing Fred. You know what? Let's go. I heard he's coming here, so let's get to the bank. So what happens is the crowds gather, and they're waiting for Jesus as he's coming on the bank. Because word spreads, does it not? And so they're waiting for Jesus, and Jesus is, number one, he has to be overwhelmed. Every once in a while we'll go to a concert, or, I remember one year we went, a couple of times actually when I was in college. Camille went with me one year, then other times the church young families group we would go down to Dallas. And we would go to this Big D NYE because they would shoot fireworks off over American Airlines. It was really cool. But one thing that blew my mind is how many people were there. It's like going to Disney World right after school's out, or the Texas State Fair. Just completely overwhelmed with the amount of people that are there. And that's kind of the scene that I envision when Jesus is getting off of this boat, is there's a massive crowd of people there. And everybody there has a different agenda of what they're looking for. And yet, what happens is a synagogue leader named Jairus, and how I envision this, he's kind of trying to fight his way through, but then he comes to Jesus and he pleads with Jesus. Please help me. My daughter is very sick. Do you realize how desperate this synagogue leader, that would be like an elder or a preacher going up there to a miracle man, because he's ran out of options. Nobody else is helping. Nothing else is coming close. I've prayed. I've done burnt offerings. I've tried to do everything that I know to do. I'm out of options. I just heard you healed Fred. Can you please help my daughter? She's just a little girl. Please help. And Jesus is looking at this man, and he says, I will go. And they start making their way to Jairus' house. And I love what the text tells us, because the text tells us how massive this crowd was. Do you realize that the text literally says that it was going to crush him? That's why I'm thinking Disney World, okay? The crowd is going to crush him, because realistically, everybody just wants to be near. They want to see him. They want to touch him. They want to do all of these things. And then what happens? A woman's there in that crowd. A woman whose life for the past 12 years has been constant bleeding. And she's tired of feeling that way. Things aren't right. And she's hoping, and she's also heard about Fred. And she's heard about the miraculous things. She keeps hearing these stories about this Jesus of Nazareth who's able to bring back life and give hope and peace and heal and do all of these amazing things. And so maybe if I just touch him, if I just touch him, I can be healed. But Jesus is on a mission. Jesus is trying to get to Jairus' house. Can't you see that this is more important? This little girl's life is in danger. And so he's hurrying over there, and this woman touches him, and Jesus asks, who touched me? Who touched me? And if it was one of us, we would be like, can't you see I'm on the way to Jairus' house, whose daughter is really sick? She could die. And here I am, happen to stop because somebody touched me. How dare you touch me? No, that's not probably how it goes. But sometimes if we're being honest with ourselves, we can relate to that, can't we? How dare you get in the way? Because I think we hate distractions. And would you agree that distractions can be the worst? How many of you have ever been I'm in full thought. I'm in full study mode, and then somebody comes in and is asking me about something that has completely taken me off. I call it losing my mojo. Don't judge me. It could be the worst. And it's realistically, it feels as if there's going to be moments in our life where we are on our way to do good things. Let's face it. I'm not talking about we're on our way to the movie theater an hour early, okay? Normally we're running late in these moments. But we're on our way to do something, and then something comes up out of nowhere. I know you're busy, but can you help me move? I know you're busy. I know you're busy. But can you talk for a minute? And then you're on the phone for 3 hours? Nobody? I know you're busy. But can you help me with this? You know what? I know you're really busy. I know what you're doing. But I've got some problems. Can you answer them? Can you make it to here? Can you make it there? Anybody ever experienced that? Okay, good. There's two of you. I can relate to you. But and really what we're thinking to ourselves in these moments happens is, can you not see that what I'm doing? I put this in here because I believe it. What I'm doing is super essential. That's more like essential is like bigger than important, you know? And can't you see what I'm doing is super essential? I mean, this is so important. This is a matter of life and death. Because realistically, if we're thinking about the text, what is Jesus doing? He's on his way to go heal a woman, a little girl that could die. And the other woman, she's just bleeding for 12 years, but whatever. Can't you see this is important? But realistically, what happens is sometimes we are on our way to do good things, but in the process of doing that, unexpected things come and get in the way. And realistically, half the time what our reactions are is I'm frustrated and I'm annoyed because how dare you come and ask me to do something? And it makes me wonder, is that the right way we should approach these moments? Is it possible that maybe Jesus himself is trying to teach us in this moment that there is a better way that we should approach these moments? And so we're going to pick back up in our text in verse 46, and this is right after Jesus asked, "Who touched me?" And what happened is when they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, this is important, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." And while Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore." Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid. Just believe, and she will be healed." When he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and the mother. Meanwhile, all the people were wailing and mourning for her. "Stop wailing," Jesus said. "She is not dead, but asleep." And they all laughed at him, knowing that she was dead, but he took her by the hand and said, "My child, get up." Her spirit returned, and at once she stood up. Then Jesus told them to give her something to eat. Her parents were astonished, but he ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened. So we go back to the question, who touched me? Who touched me? And Peter is telling him, "Jesus, can't you see we're in the middle of this sea of people? I'm even getting touched. It's not good here. It's really tight. It's very tight. Honestly, I'm a little claustrophobic, Jesus, but I'm here and all these people are around us." And he says, "No, I know someone touched me because what? Power has escaped from me." See, the woman was just thinking to herself, if I can just touch him. If I can just touch him. Imagine to have the faith to say, if I could just touch his cloak. If I could just touch him, then I would be healed. And what happens is Jesus is stopping in this moment when things are dire. And they're rushing to Jairus', but he stops and says, "I know power is left out from me. Who touched me?" And of course, everybody's like, "It wasn't me, it wasn't me." And then the woman who realizes she can't go unnoticed anymore comes forward and says, "Well, it was me. And here's why I did it. For 12 years, I have bled nonstop. For 12 years, For 12 years, this has been my nightmare. This has been my life. I have felt like I have been cursed. I have been counted out. And in the Jewish tradition, you are unclean. So she has been unclean for 12 years. She has been an outcast for 12 years. And she hears about the miraculous work that Jesus has performed and what he is doing in the world. And she says, maybe he can heal me. I believe that Jesus is the Messiah. I believe he is the Son of God. And if he is the Son of God, then he has the ability to heal and restore my life and restore my status and restore me from my brokenness. And she told Jesus it was me. That's why I did it. Thank you for healing me. And Jesus, instead of getting angry with her and frustrated that this would get in the way of his mission, he wasn't oblivious to the world. But he saw a daughter of God, and he said, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." Do you realize that Jesus was on an urgent mission over here, and yet he stopped to take a moment to help this broken woman who for 12 years has been an outcast from society? But while this happened, the worst thing happens. News comes back, and we're sent back immediately to Jairus and his situation. News comes, your daughter is dead. I can't imagine the pain of losing a child. And all of that emotion has to be wailing up inside of Jairus. And he's probably thinking to himself, well, what if we didn't stop? Maybe, just maybe, my daughter would still be here. And yet, Jesus says, do not be afraid. I will heal your daughter. And Jairus still believes, even though they've told him, don't bother the teacher anymore, don't worry about it, because she's already passed. But Jesus says, no, I will heal your daughter. Take me to her. And he arrives at the house, and what does he say? He says, look, everybody's mourning. The Bible literally tells us they're mourning and they're wailing. They're not crying, they are wailing. And Jesus says, stop it. She is only asleep. And of course, everybody's thinking to themselves, who is this guy? They couldn't help but laugh at the craziness of what he just said. And he says, no, I want the mother and the father and these disciples to come with me, and I'm going to walk in and I'm going to wake her up. Get up. And what happened? The Bible tells us that she got up and they walked out together. Jesus healed a dead person. It's amazing, the power of Jesus. That Jesus is not only has the power to stop a woman from bleeding for 12 years, but he has the power and the authority to raise the dead and give us hope in life. Because when things were dead, when everything was over, and Jairus was trying to figure out what's going on with his life, what's next, Jesus said, get up. And no longer is he going to have to be a father without a child, but he's going to be a father who was saved by the God of the universe. And I love what he says. He always says, don't tell anybody. Jesus says, don't tell anybody what happened. Why? Because he almost died on the way there. But he says, tell no one. But that doesn't change things, does it? It's kind of one of those things where it's like, this amazing thing just happened to me. I can't tell anybody, but I got to tell you anyway. Just don't tell anybody. Can you keep a secret? And of course, they're really good at keeping secrets. Everybody knows about Fred, right? But he goes, tell no one. And of course, word continues to spread about Jesus to the entire world, or the world around them, that is. And people come wanting to know, who is this man that can stop bleeding, cast out legions of demons, and can raise a dead girl? Who is this man? I have to meet him. If he can do all of these things, he can restore me. And let's face it, people continue to flock towards Jesus. But as we get ready to come to a close, I want us to think about one thing. Jesus zoomed in, did he not? I can't tell you my first reaction if I were to come out and I were to see the amount of people that were around him coming to just to speak with Jesus, if I wouldn't be overwhelmed. And yet there was one person who came in and Jesus zoomed in on Jairus. And his focus was then, I'm going to get over there. I'm going to help Jairus. I'm going to help him in this moment. And then as he's on his way to do this important thing, which many of us are really good at doing the important thing, but let's face it, some of us, if you're like me, you get focused on that one thing and you forget about everything else. And yet what happens is a woman comes to Jesus who had been bleeding for 12 years, and yet Jesus stops and takes a moment and puts all of his focus on her. Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Maybe there's something we can learn in that. Maybe there's a message there. But if we were to break it down like this, Jesus zoomed in, and maybe that's a call for us as well. And what I think is maybe instead of looking at specific things as distractions, we're in the middle of things, maybe it's time we start looking at them as opportunities. Instead of thinking, I can't believe this person is calling, asking me for this or whatever, even though I'm in the middle of this, maybe instead of thinking of it as a distraction, look at it as an opportunity to make an impact in whatever they may be going through. Maybe God has placed that moment in front of you for a very important reason. Because let's face it, there is always going to be busyness in your life. Would anybody agree with that? Some of you are saying, Darian, we've got to get to on delays, and then we got to get on the games on it. I understand, championship games are today. But busyness, but maybe what we need to do is we need to trade and change the lenses at which we look at the world. Have you ever thought about that? I wear glasses. Right now I'm wearing contacts, as y'all can tell. But if I don't have them, I can't see anything. The lights are going to look like fireworks, and I couldn't tell you who's here. I couldn't read either. But I understand that if I don't have my glasses, I can't see, right? And many of you are probably just as blind as I am, and I appreciate that. Blind people stand together. But if we don't have those lenses on, we can't see it. In the same way, maybe we need to trade out the lenses at which we look in the world and take a moment and change how we see things and realize, and maybe if we just think about it just for a moment, that God might place people in front of us in our busiest moments to see how we will respond and how we will react. Maybe this is a call that God is telling you that, hey, what I need you to do right now is I need you to start making time for kingdom work and kingdom things. I know you're busy, but I need you to zoom in. Because I do believe He places things in front of us just to see how we will respond. And so how are you going to respond? Better yet, how do you respond? Maybe you get frustrated, but maybe we need to change how we think about it and realize that no, God is placing this here. God is placing this soul in front of me because He has called me for something. Because I think there's two things that are happening. Number one, what is God trying to teach you in that moment? I love mission trips because you want to know why? It's not about how I'm helping others, but what God is doing in me. I love whenever I get the chance to serve because why? It's not about what I'm doing for everybody else. No, it's about what God is doing in me because God is changing my heart. And I wonder if God places things in front of us and places people in front of us so that He can change our hearts and our lives. Do you realize that? And I think number two, it's what is God trying to do for the world? You're like, wow, that's really broad. It is, but think about it. How many people were at the cemetery when Jesus, or wherever he was, when Jesus healed the demon-possessed man? I'll give you a hint. There might have been 12 people there, plus one. And guess what happened? The whole town heard about it. And everybody comes. And so you don't understand how what maybe the time that you're investing in helping others might spread on to other people. Because realistically, let's face it, when God changes our lives, how could we not tell people? When people invested in me and zoomed in on my life, it's amazing what God has done with that. I have been able to tell people, and I get to stand up here and I get to talk about it. And some of you are like, Danny, stop talking about yourself. Get over it. I can't help it. God has done a lot in my life. Because you never know how God is going to work in the people that you take a moment and you zoom in and give them an hour or whatever it is of your time. Because guess what? The project that you have going on that you're trying to do, guess what? It'll still be there. But maybe this opportunity won't. I remember sitting in a young professionals class back in Sherman at Western Heights, and we had an elder come in and speak to our young professionals class, and he talked about, he was on a business trip, and he was in a hurry to go help, to do something for his work. Okay, it's been over 10 years since I've heard this, so it's going to be broken a little bit, but I remember, I'll never forget this story. He says he was out and he was shopping, and this little kid came to him saying he really needed new shoes. And he said, I can't do it right now because I've got to go get to work. And then he realized whenever he got to what he was doing, he's like, God placed this individual in front of me. And he went back and tried to find the kid, but the kid was gone. We cannot allow opportunities to miss us, to pass us by, that God has placed in front of us. Because you never know what God is not going to do. Yes, what God's doing in you, but what God wants to do for the world. Because that's what God does. And so what I want us to realize is God does not want us to see opportunities as distractions, but He wants us to view them as opportunities to share the good news, to help somebody in need, to open up a line of communication, to open a door, because you don't know what God is going to do with that. And so, as we come to a close, what I want you to do this week, if I'm so bold to give you all a challenge, I want you to take a moment, and I want you to pray and ask God, what do you want me to see this week? Who do you want me to see this week? Who is it that I need to zoom in on in my life that I need to give a call, that I need to check in on? Maybe I need to go to lunch with somebody or whatever it may be. Who do you want me to see, God? I want us to do that this week.